Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Morning Meta. I am yours truly, Travis Spencer.
I'm Camilla Crawley.
All right, Camilla, we have a wonderful guest today.
Yes, we do. We have Ibnala as Kazi today, and I'm so excited to speak with Kazi
Yes,
and
yes.
just, share a little bit about my connection to Kazi as well.
Yeah,
Before we get started with our conversation, as always, I'd like to remind the audience about our themes for the season. And those themes are awakening and new beginnings, cultivating self awareness, and embracing opportunities to start anew. Our second theme is renewal and growth, reimagining life with clarity and focus. And finally, blooming and becoming, intention setting and manifesting. Yes. So, our guest today, Ibnala Eskazi, is a director of community and culture at the Newark Center for Meditative Culture and the founder of Your Shaman Song. Kazi is a graduate of Adelphi University with a degree in psychology. He is an ancestral meditation medicine initiate, a certified royal Thai medicinal massage practitioner, and a certified health fitness trainer. So a lot of hats there Kazi is wearing. And I really want to share that at this point, I think it's been, gosh, I don't know. Let's see. I think 2014 is when I started my journey on this path of mindfulness and healing with NCMC, now known as the Newark Center for Meditative Culture. And this is how I met you, Kazi. So it's been a wonderful experience knowing you, seeing, all of your wisdom and how you share with the community all the different things that you have learned yourself through your practices and through your healing. And I'm really excited to see that you have continued to move everything forward with NCMC. So they're such a huge part of my origin story, and because you're there, you're also a part of my origin story to my own healing and these practices. So I'm really excited to speak with you. So what do you say? We're gonna hand it over to Kazi now.
yes, yes.
All right. So everyone, introducing Ibnala as Kazi. And so Kazi, just share with us anything that you would like to around your background. So, whether it's background in general, and also what led you onto this path with like all of the different things I just read about you.
Okay. Um, it's a long journey, so let me start from the beginning. I was
Mm-hmm.
born in Panama, 1959. So I'll be turning 67 this coming June. And my parents brought me to the US in 1960. Lived in the Bronx, and then 7 years later, we moved to Queens. So I pretty much grew up in Queens most of my time in New York, in Hollis, Queens. Hollis, Queens is known for Run DMC, LL Cool J.
Yes.
Everybody, all cities are known by their rappers these days. So that's where I grew up. And it was a kind of a cool place to grow up because it was a working class Black community for the most part. Most of the white families had moved out. By the time I got there, there was about one or two left who never left. They kind of just stayed around, and their kids grew up with us and whatnot. But it had kind of a nice, cool mix in that it's working class, Black folks who saved up their money, moved from mainly Brooklyn, the Bronx, and Harlem to come to Queens, which is not the suburbs, but it's a little bit of a more of a private home vibe for the
Mm-hmm.
most part. But Hollis, Queens also had, like I said, everybody who moved there either came from the Bronx or from Brooklyn or from Manhattan. And so it had just about the right amount of ratchetness going on. You weren't out of the mix. You know what I'm saying? People
Mm-hmm.
were getting your case. It was back in those days where the neighbors would get in your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't this kind of thing about don't tell my child what to do? Back in those days, the neighbors would get at you if your parents aren't around and you're messing up, you know. But it was a great place to grow up. My parents gave me a nice kind of a balance, and this wasn't intentional. It just was what it was, you know. In that, I learned how to read probably before I went to kindergarten. When I went to kindergarten, I was reading. My parents taught me how to read, and I've always had a love for reading. And my parents used to bring me books all the time, you know. My dad, one of his first jobs, he worked on 42nd Street in a bookstore, G&A Books, I think it was called. Now, if you know 42nd Street back in those days, 42nd Street was the hub of prostitution and peep shows and all that kind of thing. So the store he worked in was a pornographic bookstore. It turns out that the same distributors who distributed books to Barnes and Nobles and all the other bookstores, the same people brought the pornographic books to that store. And so the guys in his store, they used to buy the books kind of like wholesale prices, just regular books. So every week my dad used to bring home a book for me, a new book. And he would bring home, and this is something I just realized about a couple of months ago, talking to one of my friends and telling this same little story here. He would bring home a book, and he would bring home a chocolate bar. It was either like the ones with the little crunchy nuts or the Nestle's. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until a few months ago I realized, oh, he played me. You know, I was a psych student in Adelphi. One of the first things we learned was classical conditioning. Mm-hmm. Pavlov's dog. You ever heard of Pavlov's dog?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, yes. He prepares the food and he rings the bell, and then he gives them their food. Eventually, he didn't even have to, you know, they'd start salivating as soon as they heard the bell. They know the food is coming. So my dad was giving me this chocolate bar with this book. It's kind of like classical conditioning. So I fell in love with books, just to, you know, make a long story short. And my parents, you know, my dad had a little library built into the wall in the basement when they finally got the basement finished. And my mom had most of her books upstairs. Now, my dad, most of his books were social-oriented books, you know, about what was going on in the community and so forth. Most of the well-known books from that time. My mother, on the other side, read books, New Age stuff. Okay, stuff like a book that it went out of style. Now it's back. It came back a few years ago. Psycho-Cybernetics. I read that book when I was about 10. You know, the 4th, 5th, and 6th book of Moses. That's the kind of stuff she was reading. So I was reading the social stuff that my father had. Like I read the autobiography of Malcolm X somewhere around the same age, 10, 12 years old. It's because I used to go in my parents' bedroom when they were not home. I'm an inquisitive child, you know. Adults have really cool stuff. I used to go through my parents' drawers and up in their closet. I climb up in the closet. I find like binoculars, and my dad would have pipes and all this other stuff, but then they also have books laying around. So I'd pick up one of their books and just start reading them. So I read all of this stuff when I was pretty young. And it gave me a nice little balance between the social, what we call now social justice type stuff, and the more spiritual type of things. And I think that played a very, very big part in the path that I went down later on in life. When I was 15, I became a 5%er. Y'all familiar with the 5%?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, for those who don't know, it's kind of a splinter group from the Nation of Islam, but it's mainly for young people, mainly teenagers. And at that time, in the 70s, when I got knowledge of self, it was really just exploding in New York. It began in 1964, but it was in the 70s, early 70s, that it just exploded. Everybody was becoming a 5%. It was kind of a fad. A lot of them became 5%ers and they lasted a few years and they disappeared, you know. But I was very serious about it. And the first time I went to what's called a universal parliament, that's the 5%ers have a meeting once a month. It's called the universal parliament. You go to Harlem. It used to be at a school. And I was going with a friend of mine. We had gotten knowledge together. We had become 5% at the same time. We were supposed to meet at the subway. So I'm at the subway waiting for this guy. You know, I'm waiting 15 minutes, half an hour goes by, hour goes by. He doesn't show up. The older brother's walking down the street. He's getting ready to go down the subway. He looks at me. He says, "Peace, God." Now, I never met this dude before, but he kind of figured out who I was. So I said, "Peace." He said, "You going to the parliament?" I said, "I was waiting for somebody to go, but you know, I never been there." He said, "Come on with me." So I went with this guy. His name was Allah Supreme Understanding. He was an older brother. And we got to Harlem and we were walking and he said, "Okay, before I go to the parliament, I'm stopping at the bookstore. Now I can tell you how to get to the parliament or you can come with me to the bookstore." I said, "I'm gonna go with you to the bookstore." I don't know if you've ever heard of a place that was called the University on the corner of Lenox Avenue. You ever heard of that? That was the community name for the Tree of Life bookstore. There's a bookstore in Harlem on Lenox Avenue. It's there for a long time. It was run by a brother, Kanya Kakanja. And you could go into this bookstore. He had it set up where, you know, it's a regular bookstore, but he had a whole section where it was just chairs and tables. You didn't have to buy the book. You could go in there, take the book, sit down and just read. Great. And I bought a book there that day. I can't remember the name of it. I've got it around somewhere. But it was this esoteric book, you know, spirituality book. And he had books on health and history, Black history and stuff like that. And, you know, I'm a book fiend, so I had to get a book while I was there. And I started going back there after I knew, you know, that it existed. I would go there to get books later on, especially if I was going to the parliament, I would stop there. But this was kind of the beginning of my introduction to what I would call the esoteric side of religion, which is where you find the meditators and you find the people who are into the different types of, today we might call it something like personal development, right? Theurgy is a name that they use in academia, you know, theurgy, where you're trying to develop your divine self. Okay, and that's the kind of thing that I was introduced to in the 5% and also in the literature that we were studying and the literature that we were going by. You know, I was a young dude. We'd go to Samuel Weiser's bookstore, which doesn't exist anymore as an actual store. I think they're online. But Samuel Weiser's was a store that specialized in that type of information. So those are two bookstores that we used to go to. So this is kind of my beginnings. Graduated, went to college, went to Adelphi University, studied psychology, and I took a class in comparative religions. And the guy was pretty good. And the first thing he had us do, the very first day, he had us meditate. And he had the Zazen benches. He had one for everybody in the class. And that's what I use to this day, Zazen bench. So that was my introduction. I'd heard about meditation, tried to do it from books, but this was an actual class where we meditated every time we had the class every week. Took us on a class trip. We went into Manhattan. We went to a Buddhist temple. We went to another temple, which I think was like different Hindu type of a temple and whatnot. You know, these were downtown Manhattan. So these were like places that most of the times you go past them, you don't know what they are. People who know because they're from that community. So that was some more exposure. And it wasn't until what really made me get serious about meditation and eventually getting into Qigong and Tai Chi and so forth. I went to my first retreat. This was a retreat put out. Have you ever heard of a brother named Haki Madhubuti?
Yeah.
Oh, no, no.
Oh man, I'm surprised. Haki Madhubuti. He's part of the Black Power movement back in the 60s and 70s, in particular, the Black arts movement. I know that you're familiar with Baraka from
Mhm.
Newark.
Yeah.
They're all from that same group of cultural nationalism and the Black arts and stuff like that. Well, Hakeem Madhubuti and some guys put on this retreat in Pennsylvania. It was called, I think, the National Black Holistic Retreat. And I went there. It was great. A lot of people that you might know spoke at that retreat. And there was one guy who spoke there. He was from Newark, New Jersey. I'd never been to Newark, New Jersey. His name was Brother Jamal. And he did his piece, and it was cool. And he was a healer. And afterwards, I went up to him because I had this rash I was getting every summer. Really, every summer I'd get this rash. I didn't know what it was. So I went up to him afterwards and I said, what can I do for this rash? I'm getting this rash every summer. It's really driving me crazy. He looked at me and said, well, brother, I can't just tell you what to get. You have to get a little deeper into it so I can find out specifically what you need. I said, okay, cool. Walked away, and in my head, I'm saying, he's full of crap. He just money out of me. He wants to make me come in, blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's the end of it between me and him. It turns out that at the end of this retreat, they had two groups during the retreat. They had a men's group and a women's group that met separately, blah, blah, blah. And the brothers group decided that we were going to go forward and keep meeting after the retreat is over to develop some things. Okay. It turns out that they had the meeting in Newark, no, not in Newark, in Jersey, at this brother's house. He shared a house with another brother who was a physician. And so I'm running into him again at his house. And, everybody else is there. We have this meeting, And little by little, I kind of got to know him a little better, and eventually started going to his workshops and stuff like that. And then I went with him on another retreat that he did in Tobago in the West Indies. It was about a week-long retreat. And he turned me on to some things that just opened me up, opened me wide. I said, okay, this guy is the real deal. I thought he was full of crap. And I found out, too, that, when I went to see him for a consultation, I was used to the people who call themselves herbalists and so forth and healers, and they just tell you, oh, I got this. Oh, take that. Oh, take. This brother was practicing ancient traditional way of healing. When you go to see a shaman or a healer somewhere, it's not just about you got this, use that herb. Our ancestors worked from a idea that it's spiritual. It's not physical, it's spiritual. And you have to find out what the source of it is. Sometimes you may have a particular ailment that's because you've broken a taboo. You've broken something that is important to the culture, to the community. It can be social. It could be physical, And so you have to find these things out, and it's done through things like divination that is used to find out. So lo and behold, I decided then to go see him, about this rash. And he had me go out and get like a couple of pounds of hyssop and some cayenne pepper and this other type of, I forgot what you would call it, but it was one more ingredient I had to go and get from this store. And I had to fill up the bath with water as hot as it could be, put all this stuff in there, and just soak in it for about 30 minutes. And I did that 3 times. Everything gone.
Mm.
I'm like, whoa, okay. Excuse me. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
So I started kind of seeing him more and getting involved with his workshops and other retreats that he did, and basically became the brother I studied with for a number of years. And that's when I really got serious about meditation and meditating regularly. So that was a long way to get to that. To that.
Wow.
It's a beautiful journey that you shared with us.
Yes, yes.
Thank
I
you.
think listening to you talk about how your your parents exposed you and surrounded you with books and things like that, it sounds very like organic, even though they may have had their own sort of strategy in their mind. It didn't sound like forceful, you know.
Right.
It made it a pathway for you to just easily get on in terms of becoming more engaged and just in love with reading and books and things like that. So my question is, do you think that from that very young age that you always had some sense of knowing because you were exposed to that information so young? And I mean, like, a knowing of like what you just described in your journey. It seems like you kind of just, you just follow things. But even as young as 15, it started that way. So do you think that you always had some sense of knowing within you, even at such a young age?
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of the things I've gotten into in the last couple of years is astrology. And I found out once I saw my chart and interpreted it, it was always there. It was always something I was supposed to do. And so I also noticed in my life that there's certain things that just kind of happen. Like I didn't go looking for certain things, they just happened. And this is what I feel like doing. I was also the kind of person that for lack of a better word, I was also kind of weird in the sense that I always wanted to do things that other people really weren't interested in. And it didn't bother me. I just go do what I'm going to do. I'm the kind of person to go to the movies by myself.
Yeah.
There's a movie I want to see, I'm going to see it. And I've been doing that since I was young. I go by myself and just sit in the theater and watch the movie. And so I've gotten into things that other people around me that wasn't their thing. And that's cool. Everybody's got their own path, right? That's how I got into hiking and backpacking. So I was part of an organization called the African Poetry Theater in Queens. This was cultural nationalist, or founded organization too. And the young brothers, there's 3 brothers, actually, me and 2 other brothers who were also 5%, were asked to start a rites of passage program for young people in the community. And we did that. And the first time we did it, we ran it from about October until the end of school in June. And at the end of school, we set up with the parents. We didn't tell the kids. We told the parents, okay, we're going to take them up to the woods. We're going to have them overnight for 2 days, just like they do it back home. And the parents wouldn't tell them. When we'd pop up, the parents would have their bags all packed. We'd have a van, boom, throw them in a van, and we take them upstate. So the first time we did this, we had tents and everything we purchased and whatnot. And we spent two nights. Yeah, 2 nights. Then we come back, and then there's a ceremony, their parents are waiting for them and all that. But this thing of sleeping outdoors in the woods, I just felt something. I didn't know what it was, but I just wanted to go back.
Mm.
So I did my usual thing. I went out and bought 3 huge books about backpacking. And I studied backpacking and what I needed. And I went out and got all the equipment that I needed. And I just started going on my own. First time I went to the Catskills. And after that, I think I went to Delaware Water Gap. And, I just started doing it. And one day I'm at work. And there was a small crew of us used to hang out, about 3 or 4 of us. And we were sitting talking one day. So, what you doing this weekend? Oh, I'm going backpacking. I'm going to go hiking, camp out. And one of the girls said, I want to go. I was like, what? She said, yeah, I want to go. I want to go. Like she used to go camping as a kid. And she liked it. And she wanted to go camping. I said, okay. You're not going to make it this one. This is this weekend, but get your stuff together. And you can go with me the next time I go. Her name was Salah Nolan. She worked in the same building with us. She belonged to a different organization, but she worked with us. And she got all her stuff. Next time I went, we went together. And she and I started backpacking together, and we decided to start an organization. Mm-hmm. And it was called the Harriet Tubman Hiking Society. Mm-hmm. We used that to introduce Black folks to going out into the wilderness and hiking and backpacking. Mainly, we did a lot of hikes. Most people, to get them to backpack is a whole nother deal, but we got a few. Mainly we did a lot of hikes, and this is back in the 80s. And it was one of a kind. It was the first of its kind, and I'm glad to see nowadays there's lots of Black folks who are hiking, mm-hmm. backpacking. Yeah. And I was going, you didn't see nobody Black out there. It was me. I'd run into white folks, and I'd run into Asians. The Asians, especially around the fall, it's part of Taoism. If you understand, Taoism is very, very connected to the earth. It's very earth connected. It's very shamanic, actually. But I'd see Asians and I would see white folks out there. No Black folks, never. Nowadays, you can see a lot of Black folks hiking and backpacking. So I don't even remember now how I got on this part of it.
But it's interesting. Oh, I'm sorry.
Things just happen. Mm-hmm. I just follow whatever it is that I'm feeling, that I want to do, and that's how most of the things that happened got me to where I am. Yeah.
But when you begin talking about the rites of passage, and you talked about the backpacking, my question is, if you could wave a magic wand in our community, what would be some of the things that you would want to see begin to shift in our community for our youth, and also for parents as we begin raising our youth and preparing them?
Great question. Rites of passage is something I think we should be done in every Black community everywhere. It's key. Being someone who, I'm a little older, I watched, let me go back a little bit. Like I said, in the early mid-70s, the 5% became a big thing. And for a lot of people, it was a fad. They came in, they went out, or they stayed in it, but they weren't really serious about it. But then hip hop came about. Mm-hmm. Not too long after, hip hop became a thing and started growing. And that became the trough where young people who wanted to know what it means to be Black and what it means to be an adult and a young person, an adult, that's where they were getting their water from. Mm-hmm. And that was cool in the beginning because hip hop got to a point where it was very conscious. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then there was a shift. And that shift went in the total opposite direction.
Mm.
to the point where we have people arguing today over who's a real nigga.
Mm-hmm.
You see these things? I mean, I'm quite sure you see it on social
Oh,
media.
yeah.
Who's the real nigga? These ain't real niggas. And I'm like, man, that's where we at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gotten to the point where we reject who we are in favor of the master's definition of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not doing that, you really not down. And even the conscious, quote unquote, conscious rappers buy into it. I hear them using the same language. They won't make songs about it, but you know. So we've gotten to a point where the message is poisoned.
Mm-hmm.
And so the community is poisoned. And people like from my age group, I mean, this is it for us. I'm going to funerals yearly, sometimes a few in a month, especially during COVID. And so it's been a total turnaround, and that's something I think rites of passage is essential for community, and not just in the Black community. You know, I see this thing about the incels and all that, and that's mainly white kids going through that kind of thing. But these are the kind of things that rites of passage addresses. You know, what does it mean to be a man?
Mm-hmm.
You're not getting any girls. There's a reason for it, because you're probably not really in touch with your manhood. And so everybody needs this. So yeah, that would be one of the first things I would say is needed in communities, is rites of passage. There's probably a second part. I don't remember what the second part was to your question.
No.
Sorry,
Well,
because I was kind of going.
well, the other part was about the adults,
Mhm.
and bringing up our children, raising our children.
Mhm.
What would you like to see for the adults as well?
You know, I really haven't thought about it a lot, because it begins with the children. If the children don't get it, the adults won't get it. I think we become one of the things, the adults will become lax in terms of their relationship to children in the communities. You know, I see children and adults talking to each other like they're equals. That was never the thing, you know. I remember I was just seeing something recently. It was on YouTube or something. There's a young lady, what's the sister's name? She's a poet, Black woman. She's a poet. And she was talking to a young lady, and the young lady called her by her first name. She stopped her right in the tracks. No, I'm Mrs. I can't remember who it was, but she let her know, I'm an adult. I'm an elder to you. There's a certain way you speak to me. There's a certain way that you approach me. Nowadays, everybody wants to be friends with kids. They don't do something. Everybody can't be hit. Somebody has to take the role of being a little more serious. I mean, when I speak, but you can't be down with the youth that you're going to escape your responsibilities. So for the older folks, I would say that's my major concern. Yeah.
Yeah, I love what you were saying there.
Yeah, and also, Kazi, I know when you were sharing about your background, you mentioned about realizing that the practices or what you were engaging in was really about getting in touch with your divine self and allowing that to unfold. Could you just share a little bit about what that means to you. What does it mean to you when you use that phrase, like tuning in or getting in touch with your divine self, and I guess feeding that?
Mm-hmm. Sure, sure. You know, in a lot of societies, you'll find, you know, older societies, they very often speak about the triune nature of the human being, the three different sides of the human being. And it's explained in different ways. Some people just make it real simple: the lower self, the upper self, the higher self, the divine self, blah blah blah. I like it. In some cultures, they say the animal self, the human self, and the divine self. Okay, you'll find in Africa there are certain tribes who consider children animals. They're not human. And I know that for people in modern, you know, modern times raised, especially in Western culture, that sounds like blasphemy. But if you think about it, we're all animals, right? We're human beings, but we're animals. We have blood, we have skin, we reproduce the same way animals do. We have to eat, we have to defecate. We're animals. Now, the human aspect of us, and this kind of goes back to the rites of passage thing and what we just talked about with adults, that human aspect, that's not a given. You're not born a human. That requires learning. It requires socialization, right? You're socialized into being a human. The community that you're in, your parents, your uncles and aunts, your neighbors, they teach you how to be a human and they exemplify humanity for you. And you learn that. It's learned, it's social. Okay? Anyone can be an animal. And we see that in this whole idea of the so-called real nigger. It's basically about being an animal. It's about violence. It's about sex as an exploitative thing, right? And so that there's no socialization there. Socialization, well, no, I take that back. There is a socialization, but it's kind of in the opposite direction that socialization takes place, right? And so once again, yes, we are part animal. We're part human if we are lucky. And then that third stage is for people who go beyond and begin the practices of things like meditation and qigong, and depending on whatever your particular religious or cultural persuasion is. Every culture has a way of feeding the divine in themselves, right? And you find your own path, or if you're lucky enough to be born into a culture that is intact, it's there. For us, we have to find it. Okay, so that's basically what I'm talking about. Becoming your best self and becoming someone who is in touch with their gifts, the gifts that they have for humanity, the gifts that they've come to share with others. I think that most people never find those gifts. Their energy is, especially now, it's harder than any other time. Your energy is in trying to hold on to your own attention. Because that's what it's about now, capturing your attention and holding on to your attention. Attention is the new commodity. Yeah. And if you get stuck in that, you'll never really spend time on yourself. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So I'd like to also hear about practices. So I know for you, you've done quite a bit over your journey. What are some practices that you do that have continued to feed your divine self that you could share with the audience?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think everyone, there's some just basic things that everybody would benefit from. Going right back to those same selves that we're talking about, like the animal self. You know, the animal self is where your vitality is. If you look at the word animal, it's kind of the root is anima, like an animated picture. To be animated, meaning to move. It's absolutely necessary for us to move.
Mm-hmm.
You have to move. If you're just stagnant, sitting in an office for 8 hours a day, then you get in your car for an hour to get home, then you get home and you sit in front of the television or whatever. We're just not built to be healthy in that type of a routine.
Mm-hmm.
We were made to move. And you find that the more you move, as long as you have some movement in your life, it will assist in your health and in your development. Not just physically, but even your mind works better if you're moving. Okay. So I think that's one of the things that's key. What was the question again?
just for just for any practices that you could share with the audience
Okay.
that are helpful for, like you said, um,
Right.
being your best self, feeding your divine.
Yeah. The movement is key.
Mm-hmm.
Then socialization is another thing that's key, right? Going back again to the human. You know, you have to be social. You have to be part of a community. I mean, you don't have to be part of a community, but it's good to be part of a community. And if you don't belong to a community, just go out and interact with people.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You have to interact with people. If you don't, you can become kind of just stiff, become like I wouldn't even say a plant. Plants even communicate. These are things that are just being found out now that plants have a whole language and whatnot that goes on between them in the forest, in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But the social aspect is needed for health. There are very few people who can be isolated continuously and not interact with others and be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very hard to pull off. I know you got these guys who go out in the Himalayas and into the mountains and they live in a cave for a certain amount of years, but I don't know how that translates when they get back around people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's another thing, being social. Um, One of the things that we do at NCMC is we do forest bathing. That's what folks call it, forest bathing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's what got me hooked on backpacking and hiking. I just realized when I was out there that I felt different. There was something different that made me come back. Years later, I start seeing these books on forest bathing. Oh, the very just being in nature,
Mm-hmm.
in that environment. In addition, they found out that there's just stuff that are falling off of the trees and different types of chemistry that's there that you're taking in. That's kind of boosting your body and your mind. So I think that people need to spend time in nature, get out of the city. We've been tricked into believing that civilization is the best thing since fried rice. Civilization is based on cities, making the city the hub of everything, and everybody moves into the city. One of the things that cities do and living in civilized societies does is reduces your ability to sustain yourself as an individual or as a small group. Because now, because you're living in civilization and living in a city, You're dependent on someone for your food. There was a time when we all knew how to fish, how to hunt, how to find, forage. You can feed yourself. People don't feed themselves anymore. You have some people are now realizing this. Now they're going back. This whole movement of people going back to live outside of the city.
Yeah.
People going back to having goats and having, just raising their own livestock and so forth, and learning how to do that. But we don't realize we're just modern day slaves. I hate to say it. Okay. And the sad part is what we're experiencing right now with the madness in terms of government, what's going on. We're looking at the death of an empire.
Yes.
This is the death of an empire.
Yeah.
It's going to take a little while, about 7 to 10 years, I think, but those of us within the empire, when the empire starts to crumble, we may very well suffer. And so we need to start really thinking about how we are going to survive and thrive as this thing crashes and something new takes over. Okay? So that is a part of the social process, because we need communities that can come together and say, okay, this is what we're facing, and these are the things we need to start doing now to be successful. Or else our children are not going to have anything. I know I kind of veered off the question.
Oh no, that was perfect.
I think what you're saying is so very important. And the way that you went about it as you begin talking about these practices to support you going inward, and then coming out to say how much it's important for us to be together and learn how to navigate this system as it's failing. I think that's right on point, because it is these things that you just mentioned that are going to be key to our survival.
Yeah. And I appreciate that you said it right out, because one of the things you mentioned is that we are absolutely in a culture of attention. That's the commodity, that's the currency now, attention. And so if that's the case, then there may be people who are not even aware that we're in the crumbling of the empire. It's not that it's coming down the pipe, like it's here already. So I appreciate you saying that right out, because I also agree that one of the key pieces is that in that awareness, it's like, all right, now where's the community, and how are we going to ground ourselves as this all continues to crumble? And it makes me think about that quote. I don't remember the native group, but the one about the 7 generations. What is?
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah. If you know, I don't know if you know. It's a quote about basically doing things now to prepare for 7 generations in the future.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So hearing what you said, it made me also think about that too, that right now it's not just important for us and how we're gonna, stick together and make it, but it's also the 7 generations that come behind us. How are we positioning ourselves and preparing for them that are coming behind us as well?
Yeah, that's the Sankofa piece. That what you're speaking about, Kazi, it feels like Sankofa, bringing back the idea of rites of passage. Being able to connect with nature in the ways that you shared. All of those are the returning. You're going back so that you can go forward.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
And your story, I believe, is demonstration and proof that it's not something that you have to wait on. Like hearing the story from your childhood, and just hearing how that unfolded, that if we want to, really just lean into what is for us, that we can reach out for it, like that, the books that you read, and interacting with people, these things will reveal themselves from to you. So even in that sense, I think your story is powerful, and it speaks to how to position ourselves. Like, we don't have to wait. It's here. We just have to be willing to be open to reaching out for it, or to see it when it's in front of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think one more thing, because I talked about the animal, the human, now the divine self. And I think that's, people really need to spend time on self-knowing,
Yes.
observing themselves, and not just in meditation, but observing themselves, learning who they are, learning what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, what am I repeating over and over and over and over again, right? That's holding me back. And really getting to know yourself beyond your name, okay, and your whatever. Kind of get in depth, and it requires observation. And this is really key when we talk about meditation. It's one of the things that you really use meditation for: self-knowing, being able to just watch yourself, listen to what's going on in your head.
Yeah.
How do you respond to certain people? And learning about what the some call the shadow. You go on YouTube, you go online, everybody's talking about the shadow, doing shadow work. Okay, I agree. But when things become popular like that, it becomes a thing that everybody talks about, and somebody's selling something real quick. And it's not that easy. But it's necessary. It's part of self-knowing. What are the parts of yourself that you're not aware of? And what type of effect are they having in your life? Right? So self-knowing is very important. That's getting in touch with your divine self.
Yes, and that's a nice bow on this. To kind of land the plane, as some people say, right? Land the plane right there. So Kazi, thank you so much for joining us in this conversation, and I know that our audience will appreciate everything that you shared, and will resonate and connect with the things that you shared also. Now, before we wrap up, we always like to ask our guests a couple of things, and these are sentence stems. So I'm going to say the first part of the sentence, and then you say like the first word that pops up to you to finish the sentence. Okay. So the first part of this sentence is: healing in African American and African descendant communities looks like, and you finish it with what word comes first.
Freedom.
All right. Freedom it is. And the second one is: community to me looks like, what word comes up?
Service.
All right, service. And the final one is: joy to me looks like.
Oh man. Joy looks like openness. Openness.
Openness. All right. So this has been a wonderful conversation. And Kazi, we're going to put any information that you would like for us to share with the audience in our newsletter. I'll just repeat very quickly. NCNC, Newark Center for Meditative Culture. Also, your shaman song, a couple of ways that people can stay connected and engaged.
Yeah.
Anything else?
NCMC. Just look for us on our website, which is being rebuilt right now. We have a new website built, but that's where the best place to find us. And that's the main place you're going to find me. I don't have a personal website yet. When I have one, best place to find me is through NCMC.
All right. So we're going to make sure that information is out there for everyone. And so anything else?
Yeah, quick question. If people are looking to maybe go on a hike that live in the area where you are, is there a place that they can get that information?
NCMC would be the place to go.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. We've got a couple coming up. Matter of fact, we just had a meeting maybe 4 or 5 days ago. And so we've got about 2 or 3 hikes coming up during the spring and summer.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Yeah, and we'll get that information and also send it out in our newsletter for our subscribers.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so much appreciation, Kazi. And to everyone out there that is listening and watching, we hope that this resonates and connects with you in some way as you are continuing on your healing journey, which we say never ends. And so we want you also to like and subscribe. And don't forget to join us each and every day here, where we're going to be starting our days with you all grounded, intentional, and connected. Ashe.
Ashe.